That's not bad sound emulation you're hearing, that's the Famicom Disk System version of Zelda 2. Hey, I'm Josh Kell, welcome to Version Differences. Today we'll be looking at the Zelda 2 Famicom version and the NES version. For those who don't know, in Japan, some games like Metroid, Kid Icarus, Mario 2, Zelda 2 were released in floppy disk format. The Famicom Disk System not only enabled games to be larger in size, but it also contains more RAM for sprites and tiles, and additional sound hardware for some more unique sounds. But it's pretty obvious that when a disc game is being translated to a cartridge game, there's going to be a few changes. We've already seen the title screen. So let's start the game, huh? Fuck. This is something you'll see if you're playing a disc game. The only thing that's on side A is the title screen, the menus, and the final dungeon. As soon as you go into the game, you need to flip over to side B. So we start in the room with Zelda sleeping like normal. One thing you'll notice is that unlike the NES version, which the pillars go all the way, the ceiling comes down in the Japanese version. Why do you start here anyway? Does Link live here? So we leave the palace and, hey, the water enemies, what? Okay, stop. First, the water moves in the FDS version. Second, these enemy overworld sprites are completely different. White ones are the little blobs, blue ones are the humanoid dudes, and the red ones are the fairies. Third, the battle entrance and battle music are completely different and aren't found anywhere in the NES version. This music was later remixed and used as the mini-boss theme in Minish Cap. All that from the first few seconds of gameplay. What else awaits us? That's not what I had in mind when I said, wait, you know, game. So you'll probably get your first level up in the first, well, they're called palaces in the NES version, but the FDS version calls them sanctuaries. Fuck it, I'm calling them dungeons. So when you level up, you'll notice that in the FDS version, you can pick any stat to level up, whereas in the NES version, each stat had a different EXP requirement, so there was only one stat you could choose when the level up window popped up. The drawback in the FDS version is that when you get game over, all your stats will go back to whatever your lowest stat was, so you need to level them up out evenly anyway, so it's like, what's the point? When you get game over, the screens look completely different, as well as the sound effect that plays. Now, get a good listen to the FDS sound effect. Whoever made this sound must have been really proud of it, because it is used all over the game. Listen to this boss. He sounds like a fucking elephant. They don't make that noise at all in the NES version. I like jumping into the items to pick them up. Gotta love the expression on Link's face. Well, guess what? In the FDS version, you can't do that. You have to stab the items to pick them up. What is this, the CDI Zelda games? Oh no, let's not go there. He doesn't even do the face, the screen pose in the FDS version at all, unless you count the sprite when Link is on the raft, which, by the way, he doesn't do in the NES version. Once you get to the second dungeon, you'll notice that in the FDS version, the colours and brick textures are the exact same as Dungeon 1. The FDS version uses the same brick textures and only grey and blue bricks for every dungeon, while in the NES version, every dungeon has a different texture and colour. If they were willing to make these changes in the NES version, I'm guessing they either ran out of time when they were making the FDS version, or it wasn't something that they thought of doing until they were working on the NES port. You know, I'm starting to notice something. For a Japanese game, there sure is a lot of English. In fact, the only thing that isn't English is the character's voice text, which has a different sound effect, by the way. Imagine if you were 10 years old and playing this game and all the menus were in a different language. You couldn't read a damn thing. Once you get to the second half of the game, you'll really start noticing some differences. Remember how you had to cast fire if you wanted to kill the lizard and Tektite enemies? Well, that wasn't a thing in the FDS version. You can kill them with regular attacks, essentially making the fire spell completely useless. I didn't cast it once during my playthrough of the FDS version. Come to think of it, I didn't cast it once during my playthrough of the NES version either. Magic is essential. You can't go wasting it just to kill a few enemies. Just jump over them. You'll save time, magic, and life. There are differences with bosses in the 4th, 5th, and 6th dungeons. The 4th boss just has a different sprite. It faces forwards instead of sideways. The 5th boss? What happened? Where the heck is the 5th boss? Instead of having that asshole with the ball and chain, the FDS version just has a harder variation of the second boss. The second boss in the NES version is already the harder variation of that particular boss, so I guess you could say the Japanese version had an easier time here. The 6th boss makes up for that though. It looks completely different in each version. Have a look. In the NES version, you have enough time to run up and hit the thing before it goes down, but thanks to the Famicon's smooth animations, it goes down way too fast. The only way to hit it is to randomly guess where it's going to come up. This is a long battle for the Japanese. So those are the major differences I found. There's some minor stuff like the King's Tomb being an actual monster area instead of just being a screen with some old bat on it. A few of the sound effects are different, like the gate opening, the sound fairies make, the sound when you die, and the sound when you open the final dungeon. If you're a fan of the NES Zelda 2, then you should give the FDS version a go. While pretty much the same game, the differences really do intrigue. I still think the NES title screen is way better though. Anyway, this has been Version Differences with Josh Kell. See you next time.